Hi there, and welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that when you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And we also believe that you can have power even in difficult relationships. Just a note for some of our new listeners, in this podcast during season 1, we're going to be reading through my journal that I kept when I was 15 and pregnant. I often think about how my future self maybe prompted my earlier self to keep this record for a certain reason. And it's cool to think about how us being able to go through it and learn from it is so valuable. Because I went through a lot of hard things, and it allows all of us to hold space for this 15-year-old girl while also seeing that we go through similar things. We go through similar things that she went through too. And when we can sit down and talk about it, we can analyze where the power and the mindset shifts in the situation can help us have breakthroughs. And it's amazing. In the 3 entries that we're going to do today, the people that are in these episodes are Shelly, my sister, April, my sister, Jesse, my husband at the time, my dad, my grandma, my little girl, Taylor, who is tiny, I think 3 weeks old during these entries, and Gina and Paul. And Gina and Paul are Jesse's sister, and then Paul is her husband. And we actually live in a 4-plex in a small town, and they live upstairs. So just to give you a little bit of context before we start the episode, let's jump in. April 17th, 1994. Yesterday, we went with Paul and Gina to look at the boat they're getting in Heber, Utah. It's the nicest, biggest boat I've been on or seen, next to our cruise boat. They're going to name it Oh Baby. It's going to be a lot of fun if they ask us to go. Today, we went to Cedar to have a birthday dinner for my dad. Shelly, April, Grandma, and pretty Taylor at my grandma's. It was such a nice day. Not too cold, not too hot. We sat on green grass, and the tulips were so pretty, and they smelled good too. We also went for ice cream. And we went to look at the new car Grandma and Grandpa Cox are getting. I love my own family, Jessie and beautiful little Taylor. I don't think she could be more perfect. Last Wednesday, April 13th, she weighed 7 pounds, 6 ounces, and she was 19 inches. Sometimes I don't think we treasure memories enough where we could just say the weather was perfect and we sat on green grass and we smelled the tulips. Let's do that more. Let's read a little bit more. April 20th, 1994. Yesterday, me and Gina went to Cedar. It pissed me off so bad because she told about 4 different people that Taylor was hers. I don't know why it got to me, but she didn't go through any of the pain or anything that I did. She doesn't deserve to say that. I'm proud of my baby. I went through it and gave up a lot for her. I love her. She's Jesse's and I's and no one else's. Anyway, I had a pretty good time and a pretty good talk. Today, they were supposed to go pick up their boat, but they didn't leave in time. They're also trading in one of their trucks for a brand new turbo diesel truck. And they asked Jesse to clean their old truck while they went to bed. They couldn't be nicer. I guess that is just such a event. Just a vent. It's funny because we have to write things like that down. We have to process those things and kind of get them out. I don't remember carrying that, everywhere I went. And part of that's probably because I wrote it down. And just for the record, I think Jesse major owed them because they did a ton for us. They did a ton for us. I don't know if I don't really want to ruin anything, but I know we'll get into it. Just they were so there. They were so supportive. Honestly, I looked at them. They were just a support, I was really glad that they were in my corner. So for me to have that much angst is really not the end all. You'll see some ways that they show up for me. It'll endear you to them just like I am. Let's do one more. April 25th, 1994. Last Thursday, we went with Gina and Paul to get their boat. We took it to a little nearby lake to see how it worked. Well, when we were trying it out, we all got excited. So that night, we came home and packed. I don't believe we did it, but for the first time, we left Taylor with her Grandma Cox. And Saturday, Grandma Mary came and got her for a few hours. She was only 3 weeks old. Well, when we came back, she had already grown and changed so much, but we couldn't believe it. We went to Lake Powell. The weather wasn't too good, so we didn't even get in the water except once. So cold. Kind of glad to be home because I miss Taylor. I remember the "if they invite us" comment. They invited us a lot. We went and had a great time at the lake, and it was a little bit young to leave Taylor with her grandma, but she did okay, and everything in that arena turned out to be just fine. So I think we were gone for 1 or 2 nights, probably 2. It just felt like eternity, I remember, because coming back to a baby that you're so attached to. And yes, I was breastfeeding. Yes, I pumped while we were gone. And yes, taking a bottle was a huge struggle, but it was also good. It was good for, I'm not saying that being away was good, but I always think it's good for a brand new baby to have a bottle. Just because if you only ever nurse them, then they are just so used to that mom can never, ever get away. Anyway, that was a really fun getaway and a good trip. The thing that I really want to focus on for, what we break down and what we talk about is the trip that I took with Gina to Cedar City, and where she claimed that Taylor was her daughter to 4 different people. I really want to break that down because obviously there was some feelings there for me, but I never talked about them. I wrote about it in my journal, which is good, processing it, getting it out, but I never said anything to Gina about it. And, how many relationships or things do you have happen in your life that you don't talk about, that you don't bring up, that you don't address how something made you feel when someone did, XYZ? How many times does that happen for you in your life? So just for a minute with me, take a little mental inventory about that. So that's what I really want to talk about today. I remember laughing with Gina when this happened. Like, I can remember her getting such a kick out of people believing that she was hers, because she just thought the world of this little girl. Gina did. She was infatuated with her. She loved her so much. And so it was a compliment to her. That's how she was looking at it. And when we were laughing about it, there's an element of me, of course, not letting on like what I really thought. because you can see what I wrote in my journal. But I remember feeling a little bit of like happiness for her that she was experiencing like this, that it felt fun for her, right? And the thing that you have to remember is that in this same circumstance, Gina loved Taylor like she was her own. It would have been natural for her to want to claim her. She was proud of her. And on the flip side, I would also, even in those very moments, claim Gina's daughter, Ashley, as my own. And I still have such a fierce connection to Ashley, even after divorce and everything. Like, just these people were really there for me in my life. They were huge supporters. So it's interesting how much I was really harboring and holding, even though now I'm able to like take a step back and really, really look at this. So it causes us to look at situations where maybe we don't speak up. Maybe we don't tell other people how what they're doing makes us feel. And so I kind of want to walk through that with you. So first, I think it's really important to understand the situation. We have to understand things about ourselves, and we have to understand things about the other person. So first, with ourselves, Connor Beaton said, our insecurities impact our ability to be intimate with another. And that's, all levels. Because sometimes people do things and we misinterpret their intentions. And it can go all different sorts of ways, but where we're just trying to break apart the things about us, about me in that circumstance and situation. Now I've done enough self-work to know that there was an element of that situation that happened that made me feel sort of tossed aside or not wanted. And that's a huge red flag for me, like for my personality. And so knowing now what I know about myself, that would allow me to deal with that situation completely different. In other words, it would allow me to kind of have a moment of checking myself compared to what the other person's intentions are. Because Gina never had any intention to hurt me. And I think that it's really important to break down something that might be happening in your life and to look at why we might be responding that way and compare it to the intentions of the other person. So even though that left me feeling a little bit like that, in that very moment, I could A, speak up, or I could recognize that her intentions were not meant to hurt me, and that it wasn't because she was tossing me aside or that she didn't want me to be Taylor's mom. See, acknowledging what the intention was can help us feel if there's hurt that's intentional. And from that point, it helps us figure out how we can let go of something that is not helping us. Because those thoughts were not helping me. And my future self would tell my younger self, well, I guess I would say, hey, Gina's not trying to hurt you. And in that moment, I can choose to let go of it, acknowledging that the other person, right, Gina, means well. Or I can speak up, like I said, and I can just say something really simple to let her know. And we're going to go into speaking up a little bit more. But I could just say something really, really simple. Or if in that moment I realized that, she was trying to hurt me, which it's pretty clear that she wasn't. But if you have a circumstance right now that you're dealing with where there's a hard situation or something comes up for you where you realize that someone is trying to hurt you, they are intentionally trying to hurt you. I mean, you also have to look at their circumstance and go, hurt people, right? People that are hurting tend to hurt people. And so that gives us a little bit of grace in dealing with other people. Because usually when someone acts out towards us, it's not about us, it's about them. And in those moments, we have to realize that we don't have to give our power away. In other words, just because they say or do something doesn't mean that it needs to influence us. One of my friends talks about it like a force field. Like we have this force field around us. And this is how she describes it to her kids, like a bubble, right? And if you allow someone's, hurtful things that they say or do to come through your force field, that's a choice. You can protect yourself. And it's kind of like, I'm rubber, you're glue. What bounces off, it bounces off me and sticks to you. Do you remember that? That was a phrase or a saying that I used to say as a little girl. We were kind of taught that. And it just has so much dang power, right? I'm not going to let it stick to me. I'm rubber, you're glue. It bounces off me and sticks to you. So if you say hurtful things, I'm choosing not to absorb it. I'm going to use my force field, and it's going to bounce off of that and go right back to you. Susie Moore said that there's no rejection that isn't self-rejection. So let that sink in for a minute. Because if somebody else rejects you, right? It doesn't matter unless you absorb that. Unless you agree with them and you absorb that. But either way, in both circumstances, either letting go and acknowledging that person means well, or realizing, hey, they are trying to hurt me. Their intention is not good. And I'm choosing not to give my power away. I'm choosing not to agree with them. In both of those circumstances, you can stand up and let your voice be heard. Speaking up is so important. There is so much drama created when we don't let someone else know our needs and thoughts. And even if it's only drama that's created in your own mind, in your own world, in your own being. And let me tell you why. There's so many reasons. I'm going to tell you a couple. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. The whole concept is that when we have these feelings and we just stuff them down, that they manifest in our body, like in our pains, in our ailments and all that stuff. So there's reason number one. Reason number two is that when we feel feelings, we create our brain, we condition our brain to feel those feelings over and over again when it's a repeated feeling. And so if you have a tendency to allow people in your life or your relationships to sort of hurt you or to push you down, then you'll fall into automatic ways of victimhood. And you're training your brain how to think and to feel. And you'll continue to bring that into your life. The feelings that we have on a daily basis recreate in our future. Sure, if it's a one-off event, then probably not. But if this is something that happens to you often, and you tend to not speak up and to not speak up and not speak up, and at the same time, you're internalizing those feelings. In other words, you're not using your force field to just, let it go. Then you will continue to create yourself in this box. And so we have to pay attention to the thoughts in our life that are not serving us. We have to practice letting them go and creating or allowing something else in their place. I recently did this. I had a fantastic experience. I was meditating, and the meditation that I was following kind of talked about that. What's a feeling that you have currently in your life, in a relationship, that you don't want to feel anymore? And they asked us to bring it to the forefront of our brain, and it was so powerful. I brought this feeling right to the forefront of my brain, and then I let it go. And I put something else in its place. And then the next time I was around that person, you want to know what I felt? I felt the recreation, the feeling that I recreated. Because that, what I choose to feel, is about me. What they choose to feel is about them. But it's freedom, and it allows you to live and to go, if I don't agree with your feelings about me, then they will not affect or hurt me or bring me down, bring my levels down. I mean, I always think it's important to pay attention to people's feelings and to hear them, because sometimes there are things that we need to correct or do something about. But there are so many times in life where people are just hurting. They're hurting themselves. And they've fallen into habitual critical ways. Or they have fallen into, bad habits of not really paying attention to how they're treating people. And then we let those habits affect us. And then it becomes a habit of ours. So that's how you do it. That's how you can say, I'm going to put up my force field and I'm going to create power in my life and choose how I feel. I can remember a time when I was really struggling with a relationship where the person in my life was saying snide comments, kind of like those backhanded comments or jabs. And I was in a big struggle with this person, constantly saying these things about me. And then I'm like so caught off guard, I don't even know what to say. So I'm just quiet. And then I walk away feeling like, gross and yucky, And I remember talking to my aunt about it. And she talked to me about something called coined phrases. Coined phrases. And she said, what you have to do is you have to think about something that you can say to that person. This is, obviously if it's something that's happening over and over again, because a coined phrase is a response of, 5 or 6 words or, whatever, a sentence, something that you can kind of put in your back pocket that you can remember to pull out when you're caught off guard. And so in this particular circumstance, I created the words, I'm going to pretend you did not say that. And the thing that's tricky about this whole circumstance or situation is that you can't create a coined phrase that you can pull out and say that's going to create more trouble. And so it has to come from a place of love. It can't come from a place of backbiting or retorting or, reacting to this person and what they're feeding you. You have to figure out what you can say back to them that will help them. Something you can say that will help them understand, that hurt me, and please don't say that again. And it can be as simple as that. You can say that. But sometimes I like to think of something creative that I could say to that person that helps me remember to love them, and that really helps me to stand my ground and let them know that I'm not going to take that. And so for me in that moment, I'm going to pretend you didn't say that was freeing to me. it's kind of like reminds me of my cute boy Scotty. And at school in elementary, there were some kids who were kind of making fun of him and saying like, "Oh, Scotty needs to go potty." And he was really distraught over this. And I remember my nephew Jackson coming in with the win, and he just said, "You got to give it back to them," in a funny way, because that's his style. It's so fun. And he said, just respond to him and say, "Oh my gosh, you have to go to the bathroom. I didn't know. Let me tell the teacher. Hang on just a minute," whatever. And he said, if you say that, it'll catch them so off guard. And Scotty went to school so armed. He was ready. And he wasn't saying something, to be mean back to them. He was just giving it back. He was just like, I'm not going to accept that. And he did that very thing. And there was freedom. Those kids never said another word to him because they knew he wasn't going to take it. And I think that our intimate relationships in our life aren't as blatant, like as kids on the playground saying things that are hurtful, to try to get attention or to test the waters or, all of the things that kids do. But in a way, people push you down because they might be hurting, right? They say painful things to you because that's just how they're feeling. And so I think responding to the situation with compassion, and also instead of taking a knife to your own heart, try to understand that they're hurting. And again, remember what I said, that whatever another person says about you, it just says more about them than it does about you. And you have all the power. When someone says something to you like that, you have so much power. It just depends on what you choose to do. Because staying silent and internalizing all those feelings is not helping you. Either choose to see them with good and clear intentions that they're having, kind of like the circumstance with Gina, or choose to see them through compassion and don't allow what they're saying to you to be true about you, because you're the only one that knows that it's true. You know if it's true or not. And if it's not true, don't make it true. Alice Walker said, the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. So remember that in your situations, in your circumstances, in life, especially going into the holidays, right? When sometimes we are with family members, and family members can get tricky because they're not always a choice. Friends are easier because we have a choice. If somebody makes us feel bad, we can choose not to be around them. But family members, we really have to stick it out. And we have to let love reign. We have to let love try to heal and fix these relationships. So make sure that you stand up for yourself and do it while loving another person, and you'll win. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to all of you who are supporting this podcast. Please remember that it can grow with your help. If this podcast or other podcasts move you, if they help you work through something or they just inspire you and you want to share, we would really appreciate that. Also, feel free if you have any feedback or questions. I would love to hear from you. I'm on Instagram at myfriendmisha. That's Mesha. And I would love to hear from you over on Instagram. You can also email us at hello@myfriendmisha.com. And one more thing, if you want to support this podcast and moving forward, and you're on Amazon anyway, buying, everything in your life, especially at Christmas time. If you could just do it through my link, then I will get a kickback, and that will help me grow the podcast. So when you shop, instead of typing in Amazon.com, it's as easy and as simple as typing in Amazon.com/shop/my friend Misha. And thank you. Thank you for letting me walk through a small part of your journey with you today. Remember that as you take time for a mindset check, you have more power than you think you do. And it's so important when relationships that surround us are sometimes difficult. You have power in relationships, even when they're hard. Until next time, my friends.